All right. Hello. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited for this virtual event. Please feel free to turn on your camera if you're able to, so we can feel like there's more people in the room. We always encourage high engagement, so feel free to use the raise your hand reaction button to ask questions and leave comments throughout Mark's presentation. And then he'll also leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I am going to go ahead and introduce Mark. Mark O'Brien is our facilitator today. He is the CEO of Newfangled. Newfangled is a digital marketing consultancy that helps expert firms win new business through utilizing their industry-leading expertise to attract, inform, and engage their highest value audience. Mark is a regular speaker at marketing conferences throughout North America and is the author of A Website That Works: How Agencies Can Create Business-Generating Sites. Mark, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Annie. And it's good to have you all here with me. This is going to be a lot of fun. As Annie mentioned, if questions come up, and I hope they do, just pop them into the chat window as you're thinking of them, and we'll make sure to leave plenty of time at the end here for live Q&A, which I understand is how you all do it, which sounds like a lot of fun, where you can just go ahead and ask the question live. That'd be great. But yeah, as you think of it, no matter what the question is, don't worry about stupid questions or whatever it might be. Just go ahead and ask, because there's a lot of detail here, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to help you really understand this material. So please just let it fly with any questions or challenges, right? Anything I don't think that sounds quite right, or whatever it might be, that can make it a little fun here. So I'm here to talk about marketing, right? That's my world. That's what we do. And when we're thinking about that, really, it's about business development, right? No one markets just for the fun of it. I look at business development as having two branches. We've got the marketing branch and the sales branch, but the only point of all of it is to generate business. And so when we work with our clients, like that's the need. We've got to actually figure out how to generate business. They don't care if they get more page views or more clicks or whatever. The vanity metrics do not matter at all, aside from the fact that they lead up to this singular bar of generating business. And so given that this is the only thing we do, we've developed a lot of knowledge around it. We typically work with 12 to 15 new clients a year, and we've got a running roster of 80. And we've been doing this since 1995. We've been at this for now, this is our 28th year, quick math. And so the fact that we are on the hook for real closed business results, we've always got a running roster of 80 at any given time. We're bringing in a decent portion of new people every year. And the fact that we are marketing technologists, we have access to all of the data for all these clients. And so we've got a view into what's really going on and what's really working that is unique in the marketplace. And that's our barometer. I say all of this just to let you know, this is what we focus on. This is what teaches us. The data from our clients is our educator. What's working, what's not for these different agencies, different organizations, typically across North America, a little bit in Western Europe, but most of our clients are across North America. What's actually happening now? Because this stuff's always changing, right? What does work today may or may not work tomorrow, and we need to understand that, or else we're not going to fill our value prop of actually generating business. And so we, like my son and his friends like to say, we focus on facts, right? Facts, like what is working now. So everything we're going to talk about today is based on what is actually working across this broad landscape at this moment. And so that's where we are. And I'm excited to share all this with you. And again, happy to get into any questions or thoughts you have around this as we're going through things. So over all these years of doing this, the number one thing we've noticed that most organizations, most independent entrepreneurial organizations, the thing they struggle with the most, more than any other thing, is deal flow, right? And by that, we're talking about what is actually in your pipeline, right? How much opportunity do you have in your pipeline? And most firms we work with, they like their chances of closing a good deal when it shows up. The right opportunity shows up, great, we can close that. But it's just typically you want more at bats, and the at bats are what allow you to have choice. This is an illustration from a friend of mine, David C. Baker. He's a consultant to various firms in around the world, and this is a great graph that he's been talking about and building his talks around for a long, long time. And it's this idea of the difference in your opportunity, the amount of people out there who want to work with you, and your capacity, the amount of work you can get done. And that delta, the delta between the hopefully increased opportunity and decreased capacity, represents your ability to say no. And saying no is might be the most powerful word in the English language. And we want you to have the freedom of choice, okay? To not just take any job that shows up, but to be able to think about who you can best help, who you most want to help, what you can do to ultimately serve your mission as an organization. And that's what it really gets down to. So, say no when the budget isn't right. It's the right kind of client, it's the right kind of job, but they just don't have the money, and you need the money because you have to be a responsibly run business. Saying no because they have this job and you could do this job, but that job's not going to have enough impact on that organization in order for you to fulfill your mission. And saying no just if there's mission misalignment. They've got the budget, they've got everything, but it's not the kind of organization you want to spend your energy and focus helping to further. That we want you to be able to say no for all these reasons. Maybe just saying no because you don't feel like it. This person doesn't seem that they'd be that great to work with. They're probably going to be a real drag on my team. Just being able to say no freely and often, it can transform your business. But we can't have that freedom to say no without deal flow. So deal flow equals choice, right? It really comes down to that. That's what you need. And there are 3 different ways firms typically seek to impact deal flow. And we're going to look at each of those and talk about some of the different aspects of each and pros and cons. So it's a picture. Let's see. I'm not sure if I can see the chat here. I can't. Or normally ask Annie. You can see the chat. Does anyone recognize anybody from this picture? Annie, let me know if people throw out any names.
Somebody put Willie Nelson is in the back.
Willie Nelson is in the back. That's correct. And anybody else recognize anybody else in here? This is basically a test of the audience's country music fanhood.
And age, maybe too.
And age, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a certain kind of country music. All right, so yeah, that's Willie Nelson in the back. Then the forefront on the right is Waylon Jennings, and that's the woman is June Carter Cash, who is famous in her own right, but she was also Johnny Cash's wife. So those are all people that some people might recognize. The other guy, the guy next to June Carter, is someone who was a friend of mine a long time ago in the 90s. His name is Mark Rothbaum, and he was and still is Willie Nelson's manager, along with managing a number of other people of that status. And I was in high school when I knew him, and I knew him because I was a busboy at a restaurant he frequented. It was in Connecticut, right outside of the New York state line. So he had got some interesting people coming in every once in a while, but he was there a lot. He was there like weekly. And so we all got to know him. He was a staff favorite, super nice, magnanimous guy with probably a lot of the qualities that made him a great manager in the first place. And he had all sorts of different theories on different things, but one of the theories he had was on marijuana. And his theory was this, and since he was Willie Nelson's manager, we took him to be somewhat of an expert on the topic. And his theory on marijuana was, and again, this is the 90s, things have kind of shifted over time, but his theory was, if if your life is great, if you're exactly where you want to be, your future's bright, you're on the right track, everything's going great, a little marijuana once in a while is not a big problem. If you're living in your mom's basement and working at McDonald's, you probably want to lay off it. And his general theory is that it basically breeds a certain level of complacency, of being okay with where you are. And if where you are is a good place, well, that's probably okay. If where you are is not a good place, it's not going to give you any extra motivation. And I always thought that theory was really interesting. And I was glad to have learned that theory at a young and impressionable age. And I bring all this up because referrals are the reefer of biz dev, right? That's the deal. For those of you who are aware, reefer is slang for marijuana. So let's take a look at why. They're not your key to the future for a number of reasons. One, they beget more of the same, right? You're never going to be referred for something you've not yet done, right? That's pretty logical. And that's a problem because of a force in the modern marketplace that dictates the pace of change. When I started at Newfangled, I started as I'm the owner now and have been for a long time, but I started as a barely paid intern in the year 2000. And I vividly remember my very first moments. I walked in, sat down, and the CTO came, showed me my desk. I was incredibly nervous because I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't really think I belonged there. And the first thing he said to me, well, not the very first thing, but in that first half hour, he said, okay, here's the deal. Congratulations, you got yourself a seat here. You're in the door. If you want to stay here, you have to reinvent yourself every 2 years. And I was terrified when I walked in, and I was quite so scared at that moment because I couldn't imagine reinventing myself every 2 years. I didn't know who I was professionally in the first place. How do you reinvent something you don't even understand? And it was scary. It made a significant impression on me, and I'm so grateful for it because it set my perspective. And I did end up reinventing myself every 2 years. In fact, 4 years after that date, I was the president of the company. Another 4 years after that, I owned the company. So a lot of reinvention happened, and not just with me, with the whole organization. And we're still reinventing constantly. And that's why we've been around for 28 years. That's the single reason. Our ability to reinvent is why we're almost 3 decades into this thing. And that's the truth for all of you. We have to reinvent. We have to push. We have to change. We can just look at AI. You can look at any market force. Google's rising in prominence, the iPhone coming out, various recessions. Things are gonna happen. And we've got to be in a nimble position and be able to respond to it. And the way we respond to it is by pushing the edge with our client work, always doing something new, always trying new approaches. And referrals keep us locked in a specific groove. And that is not a great thing. Now, I want to be clear. I love referrals. I'm not anti-referral. Okay. I'm just saying if your sole approach to biz dev is referrals, I think you're in trouble. So another issue with referrals is that they're typically lateral or downward. So if you're in an organization and your main point of contact is a director at your client organization, then they're going to be able to successfully, meaning actually get the work, refer you to other directors or lower managers. Very rarely will they successfully be able to refer you up to the executive class, right? And so referrals tend to have that sort of lateral and downward nature to them, just by nature. And so if we extrapolate that over time, that means we're doing, less and less important work as the years go by. So that's also another issue. And the last issue is that they won't be enough. They just won't be enough. If you're, doing great by referrals now, congratulations. That's wonderful. I know a lot of you have built your business through referrals and you're very proud of that, and you should be because of the way you've built your businesses. But if you want true control, true freedom, and the true ability to grow and change as you will need to, as different advances in technology and the overall economy show up at your door, you're going to need to grow through more than just referrals. The number one thing I hear, I spend most of my day speaking with leaders and owners of all kinds of businesses around North America. And the number one thing I hear now, since COVID, really, since people kind of got back at it after COVID, the number one thing I hear now is that we've subsisted happily and healthily subsisted on referrals for years, but that stream's drying up, and we need to try something new. So referrals are good. Wholly subsisting on referrals, not so much. So the next thing the second of the three approaches to creating more deal flow that I want to address here is outbound sales. And this is a little section that I playfully call outbound sales and your high school crush. So I am showing my age a little bit here. I was in high school in the early 90s. And this is Heather Santini from Danbury High School, graduating class 1993, along with me. And Heather Santini was one of the alphas. Day one, she walked in. I went to a school of 2,400 kids, massive public high school. And she owned the place the moment she showed up. And for those of you who went to school in the States, I think you might be familiar with all the unwritten rules, right? She was decidedly an alpha. I was decidedly not an alpha. There were all kinds of rules that everyone understood about how people can and cannot engage. For example, you couldn't just go give a note to Heather Santini. Well, I couldn't, at least. You couldn't just walk up and you couldn't call her, right? You couldn't call her at her home. That would be ridiculous. You certainly couldn't just walk up to her and ask her out on a date like that. That's not going to happen. And if it does happen, your high school life is over because you'll be the laughingstock. You just knew this. Everyone knew this. Everyone knew what the rules were. You just couldn't do any of those things. And so you've got really no power, no control until you've got something that she's interested in, right? In this case, perhaps it may have been in real life, 2 tickets to see New Kids on the Block at the Worcester Centrum. That would work to get Heather Santini's attention in the late 80s, early 90s. And I bring all this up because Heather Santini and all of those unwritten rules are the exact same as all of the rules for prospect engagement. Okay. Heather Santini is your prospects. You can't just call them. You can't just ask them for work. You can't just show up, right? You've got to engage them on their terms with something that they care about, that they need. You can't be the one that's needy. They have to be the ones that express need. So it's all about timing, right? When you take an outbound sales approach, it's like sort of a spray and pray kind of thing. Like, okay, let's just try to book a ton of meetings with all these buyers, hoping that somebody is going to actually have a need that matches ours. That doesn't work, right? The chances of that actually landing are very, very, very low. And what it does in the meantime is it damages your brand reputation. When you're out there asking, people have pity on you, and pity is not a great business development technique. And it's about pursuit. They need to come to you. You can't go to them. So we need to engineer a system in which they are happily and eagerly coming to you. And above all, it's about preserving the expert stance. I mentioned pity is not a great marketing technique, right? Or generating pity. The expert stance is something that you have to earn and preserve always in terms of how you're behaving in the marketplace in a public facing role, and also in terms of how you behave with your client through all the different stages of the client relationship, in the marketing stage, in the sales stage, and in the actual client stage. Like, you've always got to be the expert, because most of us are knowledge workers, and we're hired for our knowledge, and we need to maintain that stance at all costs. And outbound sales by nature degrades that stance. There's really, as far as I can tell and have seen over the past 20 some odd years, I don't see any way of doing it without degrading it. So in terms of the ways that firms can increase deal flow. Being reliant on referrals, no good. Outbound sales, cold calls, that kind of thing, degrade the expert stance. And so we're finally at the last thing, which is what we're ultimately here to talk about, which is marketing and the power of ubiquity. So we define marketing as the act of helpfully educating a focused set of prospects between right now and the day they are individually ready to speak with you. And that's the idea of ubiquity. You just kind of need to be everywhere, but not everywhere asking, not everywhere needing. You need to be everywhere offering, teaching, helping, being patient, just showing up on the scene and having something really smart and relevant to say again and again and again and again. That's it. You just need to create the sense where, people are just bumping into you everywhere they turn, not physically, digitally, right? And when this is done right, small firms like all of ours can look like massive firms. When we create this ubiquity, we give the impression, we're not lying about it. We just give the impression that we're a much bigger firm than we actually are, because the prospects just assume that since we're ever present, right? I'm using the general we here, right? So that's what needs to be created. And this gets to why Newfangled does what Newfangled does. We're digital marketers, and I confess, I don't care about websites. I don't care about paid media. I don't care about email. I don't care about any of those things. I care about generating business for our clients. And if painting rainbows on the sidewalk was the number one way to generate business for you, I would be a rainbow painter, right? That's fine. That's the thing that I'm passionate about, that we're passionate about, is generating results. And again, going back to these 80 clients who are our teachers individually and collectively, we learn, we tweak, we change it. Like what we do and how we do it now is completely different than it was 7 years ago, and quite a bit different than it was 3 years ago. And I just had it yesterday, a company-wide meeting talking about an entirely different way of delivering these services based on what we're seeing working today, right? And so we're an entrepreneurial organization just like you are. We can do anything. Right? We've got complete entrepreneurial freedom. And so we choose to do these things because these are the things that we see work. And this is what I want to share with you specifically. So I've broken down into 5 pillars. The first is positioning. Let's see here. There we go. The next is content, your website, email, and finally paid media. So these are the 5 things we'll be looking at specifically. These are all things that I just said I didn't care about. And I don't, except for the fact that I'm in love with them, because this is what generates business. So let's start with positioning. So positioning is the worst. And it's so hard. And what I'm talking about when I say positioning, I'm talking about your unique value proposition, UVP, USP, there are all kinds of different words for it. But it's the thing that you stand for in the marketplace, the thing that separates you from everybody else. It's my belief that getting this right, getting the expression and articulation and even identifying your positioning is the single hardest act in all of business. And not just getting a positioning in place, but getting the right positioning in place. So we're going to spend a little more time on this than we are all the other ones, all the other pillars, for those of you keeping track of time, because this is really, really important. If you fall in love with everything I say today and decide that you're going to go ahead and embark on this journey on your own and go do all these things without doing this one thing, I will guarantee you, write some kind of personal guarantee, that you will waste every single cent. You will waste all of it. Any business development effort that's not rooted in exceptional, we just will leave that one word, exceptional positioning, will fail. That's a fact. As far as everything I know, everything I've learned, that is the most fundamental fact I know in this space. So I'm going to go back to Jim Collins of the Good to Great book that probably all of us read at some point. It came out 20 something years ago. You might not remember it. So I'll dust this one topic off for you. And it's his hedgehog concept. And this is how he describes positioning. And it's beautiful. It works really, really well. And so I figure I'll just use it right here. So he says there are three elements that create an excellent hedgehog concept, which is your unique value proposition. The first is passion. You've got to really care about this thing. You know, when I was going back to the 90s, what I cared about in high school, like I didn't dream of being a CEO of a digital marketing agency. Those didn't exist. It was definitely not anywhere close to my radar. I thought it'd be really cool to be like a guitarist for a rock band. Something like that. That's what I was passionate about when I was 13, 14, whatever it is. But now I really am passionate about this. You know, I've got my family, I've got my life, I still have the music and everything, and that's all great and that's fun. But like, I love doing this for you people. Like this, it thrills me. It gives me an incredible amount of energy and satisfaction. So it doesn't need to be the thing that, you know, you're gonna, you know, die for, but it does have to be something you really care about. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. That's not that hard to wrap your head around, right? The second thing is that it's got to fuel your economic engine. Okay. However you define that, whatever the economic engine is that you've laid out for yourselves and your organizations, it's got to fuel that. So if you're really passionate about serving this tiny niche, but that niche has no money, well, there's a problem here, right? And I mentioned this, it seems obvious, but this happens all the time where people do choose a target, but that target is more or less broke. And it's not going to work out very well. It's a good way to go broke yourselves. And so those two things make sense. Yeah, you got to care about it. It's got to generate money. Okay, right. This is like the 101 of Business 101. The third thing is where it gets interesting. You've got to be the best in the world at it. It's got to be something you can legitimately see yourself becoming the best in the world in a reasonable amount of time, say 18 months, right? Not 5 years, but in the near future. And what I don't mean here is that this is something you have to be great at. What I mean here is you have to actually be the best in the world at it. This is where people just kind of gloss over this portion of the book and don't get that one key, and that key is the key to all the rest. So that might sound ridiculous to some of you at the outset, but given the mission that most all of you are on as Small Giants members, maybe this hits a little closer to home. This has to be something that you have elite status in, and the way that's done is by shrinking the world. Right? You can't be the best web developer on planet Earth. That doesn't exist. But you could be the best web developer for higher ed or something like that, right? It's this X for Y thing. So all these three things, the combination of these three things have to come into play. And let's look at some examples. Lawyers for a creative business, digital marketing experts for independent hotels and management companies, higher ed digital partner, as mentioned, marketing for public safety, you know, the brand heritage agency, you know, you get the idea of, you know, this is the kind of stuff we're looking for. It's an X for Y. We do this thing for these people, and the overlap has to be real. A few quick tests of this. One, once you have your X for Y statement, your positioning statement, could you go and buy a list of those people? Right. Say you're a strategic consultant for visionary leaders. You cannot go buy a list of visionary leaders. Doesn't exist. There's no like SAC code for that. There's no checkbox inside of LinkedIn for a visionary leader, right? That kind of thing. It's really easy to kind of fool yourself on this. So I'd encourage you to do everything you can to not fool yourself on this, because again, this is the entry fee. Without doing this, you cannot pass go. Okay, enough about positioning. The next thing is content. And I won't say this anymore after this, but content is actually the second worst. So once you've got your best in the world, focus. We are going to own this segment for these people. We are going to be the top choice for this thing. Then it's about expressing your expertise around that. And so when I talked about the power of ubiquity earlier, it was about always being around, being helpful, saying something really smart, saying something weirdly insightful. That's the thing. Your content, based on your positioning, has got to be so good and specific and so geared towards the mind of your buyer that buyer sometimes thinks you've got like a webcam in their office. Like you're talking about things that they just had an internal meeting about yesterday. It's got to be that level of content, And it's hard. It's hard. Most of you, almost all of you, as far as I can recall from the list that Annie sent me, aren't in the business of creating content. And even if you were, you're doing it for your clients and not yourselves. And so like actually expressing your opinion and even forming what it is in the first place is very, very, very difficult to do, but it's essential. And it's one of those things, the act of doing it will help you greatly improve at it. And that the article you write today or work with the writer on getting written, that's based wholly on your perspective, that's going to change the way you behave in the sales conversation the very next day, right? I could put you in a room once we have your expertise settled out, put you in a room with no internet connection, no books, nothing, just a notepad for say 3 days. You'll be fed, it'll be a very comfortable room. You'll be very happy to be there, but you have no access to any information at all. And just ask you to start expressing your thoughts around these specific topics. You're going to walk out of that room incredibly more intelligent just because you've connected patterns in your own mind. You've already got this stuff. It's why you're already in business. It's just a matter of understanding your own reality and understanding your own value proposition and the amazing work you're doing by solving real world problems for your clients and then talking about those things in a weirdly generous way. Like you kind of want to give it away. You give away the details of your expertise, the real fine, great nugget details, so that people will see that you deeply understand the situation. And then they pay you money to apply that expertise to their custom situation. That's how it works. And so going back to our database of all the stats, all the marketing stats, all the biz dev stats for these 80 clients, the high performers in that database, the ones who are regularly generating business from their marketing efforts, they publish the expertise monthly, right? There's a consistent publication. It might just be one piece. That's fine. Some do it more often. Few who actually see results do it less often, but they publish monthly. They're putting something out there. And they're creating at least 2 gated assets per quarter. Gated means that you have the prospect has to do a little bit of work to get the content. They got to fill out a form or give their email or click a button somewhere. There's some action, some trigger action required on the prospect's part to actually get this content. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. They publish content upgrades consistently. A content upgrade, we'll talk a little bit more of this as well in a second. Content upgrade is, say you've got a blog post that's on your site and it's free and indexable. You don't have to like fill out a form to read the blog post, but there might be a worksheet that's an attachment that you could, submit your email to download, or an infographic, or a spreadsheet, a calculator that you could manipulate yourself to see what your reality might be for this given topic. Those types of things help to allow you to get the SEO benefit. Although I hope SEO comes up and we can talk about it in the Q&A. They allow you to get the SEO benefit, but they also give you the opportunity for that engagement. And that engagement is critically important. They support this publication with email promotion. This idea of if you build it, they will come. Like, okay, I'm just going to put my content out there in the world and good things will happen. That's not true anymore. You've got to do a lot more than that. You've got to make sure people are going to see this. So email promotion, and then always have a really great one of these 2 gated aspects a quarter. Always have one great gated, engageable asset running on LinkedIn that you're putting ad dollars behind. Quick note here on all this conversion stuff about content upgrades and gated assets. So we looked at 5 different articles for 5 different clients and actually ran a live test once we decided to go pretty hard on content upgrades and gated assets. So you can see here, articles 1, 2, 3, or 5, Pre-upgrade, how many conversions we got, post-upgrade, how many conversions we got. And so what a conversion means is anyone engaging with you on your site, giving you their email address. Could be some more information, doesn't really ever need to be, honestly. Email address, corporate email address is enough, pretty much across the board. But they're giving you they're giving you their email address in exchange for something of value, and that thing of value is your expertise. So you're getting the good stuff. You're getting the really good stuff. And because you are so positioned and you're creating this exceptional content that really is valuable because you're kind of giving away the best nuggets of your knowledge, it's worth an email address to the right people. And so the difference between having engageable content that's gated in this way through content upgrades or forms, that kind of thing, and not, net represents a 3,000% increase in conversions. And the conversion, the first time your prospect gives you their email address in exchange for something that you have to offer, your expertise, that moment, the first moment, that is the most important moment in the entire business development relationship with that individual, including the time they sign the contract, because that's when the door opens. Prior to them converting to saying, hey, I'm this person and I care about this thing. Prior to them doing that, you have no idea who they are. You can't evaluate the success of your efforts based on just clicks. It doesn't matter. Who cares about clicks? We care about the humans behind the clicks. That's how we're going to evaluate whether we're reaching the right audience or not. We can't market to them specifically. We can't track them. We can't do anything. We're helpless. As soon as they convert, then the power balance in the buy-sell relationship shifts to us. And we can engage them. We can nurture them responsibly and functionally up to and through the time they actually become a client. So this conversion thing is incredibly important. That leads us to website, where most of these conversions happen. So on the site, the high performers consistently express their clear positioning on every single page. So that group I showed of 9 different firms with those positioning statements, all of which were between 5 and 11 words. I worked with all of them to craft those statements. That phrase has to be on every single page of your site, right up in the header space. So it's the logo and that phrase, either to the right of the logo or below the logo. It could be somewhere else, but as long as it's in the header along with the nav, where they see the firm, this statement, and then the navigation system. Those are the things that need to be in the header on every single page. Reason being, when you do all this right, when you're creating this great content and you're doing email properly and Google's indexing you and you're running ads on LinkedIn and Google, when you're doing all this really hard work, you want to make sure that when your next best prospect shows up on your site, that they realize they're in the right place. And when you're doing all this well, your homepage is not your homepage, right? People who are going to your homepage are the people who are being referred to you, the people who already know about you, the known audience. All of this kind of activity is about engaging the unknown audience, those people out there who desperately need you, but don't know you exist yet, until they see this brilliant article on LinkedIn that speaks exactly to the issue they have right now. And they click through to it and they hit the article page, that page. That's the thing they care about. They don't care at all about you at the moment. They care about themselves, because all prospects are inherently selfish, right? And they get to that LinkedIn page, they get to this page on your site, and they see the logo, they see this thing. We do X for Y. And lo and behold, they're Y. Prospects are selfish. The faster they see themselves in you, the better things are going to go for you. We call it the that's me moment. How long does it take for your prospect to get to your site and realize you're speaking to them? If it's more than 10 seconds, game over. It's got to be within 10 seconds of the first time they come to your site. Has to be. Without that, they're going to hit the back button, go back to LinkedIn, go back to the billion results on Google, go back to the other emails. We've got to let them know that you exist solely to serve them on this thing they care about instantly. So they have to Have that positioning on every page. They also provide an organized explanation of their services, straight enough. Regularly publish proof of results, just proof. Micro case studies can be a great way of doing that. And they prioritize, back to this conversion thing I was mentioning earlier, contextual engagement points that differentiate between SQL's sales qualified leads and MQL's marketing qualified leads. So what many of you are doing now on your sites are inadvertently saying, if you're ready to buy now, we'd love to talk. Otherwise, you're not worth our time. Now, of course, none of you would ever say that to an actual prospect. It's not in your heart to say that to anybody, right? It's not the truth. But when you have a site and the only engagement point is the contact us page, that's exactly what you're saying. We need people who discover you and who correctly identify you as a wonderful resource. They need to be able to engage in the research stage of their marketing journey, in the evaluation stage of the marketing journey. And yes, of course, the purchase stage too. But one thing leads to another. And we got to get in at the beginning of this trip. The earlier you are on that journey for a prospect, the easier it's going to be to get their attention. They're not, their red flags aren't up. They're not suspicious. They're not vetting. They're just like learning. We want to catch them at the learning phase. And then we want to be their partner throughout all the different stages so that when they realize, okay, we need to hire for this need. We need to fix this. We can't do it internally. We need to hire these people who I've been reading for the past days, months, years, whatever it may be. These are the ones I need. I've got to at least talk to them. Right. And that's you preserving the expert stance. That's you being on the right side of timing. That's you being on the right side of pursuit. That's how all this stuff happens. Okay. Couple more pillars here. Email. Much to the chagrin of my email department, I'm famous for saying email has become more complex and less effective every single year. And that's true. It used to be 10 years ago, you could just buy a list and email a list that same day and have decent results as long as you're doing it the right way. Like you have good content, you have a good value prop, all that stuff. You can just do that. Now you can't even dream of doing that. In some places, you'd get massively sued for doing it. You get put out of business for doing it in some areas, meaning Canada and the EU. So email's really hard, incredibly complicated. And again, less effective as each year goes by, but it's still the most effective nurturing tool out there. So when someone does see you and they get to your site and you have those engagement points, those different forms for people in the earlier stages of the buy cycle, and they sign up for a newsletter or they download this awesome PDF, whatever it might be, then we can use email to just every, once or twice a month, get in touch with those people, let them know, hey, here's our new article. Again, ubiquity. We're just sharing knowledge. It's not licensed to spam them for a call every week or every 3 days or ask them for a quick question or any of the crap we're getting. Like this is not all the junk I and you all get all day long is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is after a prospect has identified that you are a thought leader they need to pay attention to, then it is healthy and even responsible to send them your best thought on a regular basis. And they can unsubscribe anytime, all that stuff, fine. But this keeps that pilot light on. We've got countless examples of clients who, they have an email list of say 4,000, 5,000 people that they've built up over time, and they're really responsible with it. And, a particular person got 30 emails over the course of a year or two and never even opened one. Like they were in the inbox and just delete. And then for some reason, the right email showed up. That person, they had just gotten on a meeting talking about this thing. They've got a burning need and you are addressing that email. And within 3 weeks, you've got a great contract. Like that happens all the time still when you play the game right. And so it's an essential part of the marketing matrix here. High performers send a couple emails a month to a list of 2,000 plus. You basically want to have your entire addressable audience in that list, and there are different ways of doing that. Open rates higher than 20, click-through rates higher than 10%. These are low numbers, right? These are not huge numbers, but these are the numbers that the high performers consistently get. Those who are, again, regularly generating business from their marketing efforts. Okay, lastly, we've got paid media. There are all kinds of things in hindsight that are do differently, of course, but the number one thing I would do differently in the history of Newfangled's tenure is I would have adopted paid media. I would have brought paid media into the mix much earlier. It is a force multiplier for this stuff when done correctly. And what is not correct is speaking with a prospect is now like 3 months ago, and she was saying, I just want to put logos and faces. That's what, if we just put logos and faces, everything would be great. No, that's not the way to go about marketing. Paid media, the kind of I'm talking about is not putting logos and faces. Typically, you'll be using LinkedIn and Google, and especially on LinkedIn, all you're doing is paying to make sure that this amazing content you wrote shows up in front of your buyers as a content piece. And that looks like a content piece. It doesn't look like an ad. It looks like a content piece. And that's what you do. You pay for that priority. And with LinkedIn, you can get incredibly specific about exactly who should be seeing this and how and when and all the rest. And it's all entirely trackable. It's when this is used properly, it is so incredibly powerful. It's really complicated. It's easy to burn tons of cash, especially on LinkedIn if you don't know what you're doing. But my gosh, it is, like I said, a force multiplier. Doing all of this without getting the paid media right would likely yield no result. So that's that. I think that covers that for paid media. Spend trends. Most of our clients aren't spending that much. We see $2,000 to $4,000 a month between LinkedIn and Google total, all in, is about right to generate the right kinds of leads. It's typically a 60-40 split, and where that goes, it depends. If your expertise lends itself to lots of keywords, then you might spend more money on Google. If not, you're probably going to spend more money on LinkedIn. Some of our clients are 100% on LinkedIn. And here's why. All things being equal, your money's better spent on LinkedIn. Ideally, you do both. Weirdly, the Google, you're doing, Google ads, paid search, the conversions you get on that tend to be later stage, more purchase-oriented conversions, which I wouldn't have ever guessed, but that's the truth. Those are the facts. So let's look at a few things here. LinkedIn, obviously looking here, like twice the cost per click. Click-through rate, oh, sorry, that's 2 to 7%. Sorry. So that's quite a bit different. But the conversion rate is 7-fold, and the conversion to prospect ratio is a little bit higher. So that's what that conversion rate plus conversion to prospect ratio, even though LinkedIn's more expensive, we're getting more of the right kind of people on LinkedIn through primarily lead gen forms and things like that. Okay. We're going to touch on one last thing here. And we're going to look at the flywheel of expertise, and we'll leave a few minutes for Q&A. So this is how the flywheel of expertise works. This relates to marketing, but everything else you do. So first, going back to Jim Collins' hedgehog concept, focus. Who are you and who are you meant to serve? What can you be the best in the world at? A great example of focus and an exercise that sometimes run people through. We won't do the exercise today for time reasons, but this is a village in Provence, Gourd. My wife and I recently spent a couple of weeks there, and it was absolutely amazing. And what I ask of the audience is, okay, tell me 3 things that are defining characteristics about the house we stayed in here, just by looking at this picture. And it's a bit of a trick question because you can't, right? You can't, because you don't know which one it is. If I show you a picture of the actual house we stayed in, you could tell me 300 things. And that's how focus works, right? You didn't get any more intelligent in the past 5 seconds, right? It was just a matter of you were seeing more clearly because you were looking closer at the problem. This is the nature of positioning, of having an incredible, unique value proposition, of truly being the best in the world. All desirable business attributes start with focus. Serving a specific audience to the degree of best in the world capabilities. When you do that, when you focus so closely, you develop a deeper level of knowledge. You're seeing patterns. You're seeing things no one else is doing, no one else is seeing, because they're not focusing as deeply as you are. That's going to bring in more of the right kinds of prospects in that category. And when you have more of those prospects, you have more choice. Again, deal flow equals choice. And that allows you to choose the best clients, and you get more of that work, and more of that work leads to deeper focus. And this is a wonderfully positive and beneficial flywheel that just keeps turning and builds momentum. And you go farther and farther down that road. Once people commit to this expert path, they think, oh, we'll try this thing. Once that works, then we'll add on this thing and this thing and this thing. And they look at expertise as an ultimate play for diversity. It's not. It never happens that way. Once you taste that competence, that best in the world status, and you see that you are looked at and revered as an expert, you hunger for more of it. And you just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper down that path. You never stop. And it creates incredible amounts of value inside of your organization, but also in the marketplace, because you're truly helping the people that you've set your mission to serve in a way that no one else is. So that was a mouthful. Really happy to field any and all questions relating to this or whatever else you want to talk about.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. So if anybody
I'll
wants
stop the screen share here.
Yeah, if anybody wants to type their questions in the comment section, if you want to just come off mute and ask them, you are more than welcome to. I also have a few questions that people sent in prior that I can raise as well to give you guys a couple minutes to think. One of the questions is actually related to SEO, Mark, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
Obviously. So it basically just asks, where should somebody start with SEO if they haven't really taken any effort into that endeavor yet? So it's
SEO is dead. Okay, it's over. I'm not being a tiny bit facetious. It's 100% over. SEO is no longer a viable marketing strategy for any of you. If you haven't yet gotten into this, if you're just thinking of embarking on a content strategy and building up your keyword ranking, all of that, don't even start. It's too late. Again, we've been doing this for a long time, and we've watched over the past few decades the amount of time it takes for Google to actually index you for best in the world content. Like if you do everything exactly right, you're publishing monthly, perfect content, deep, really great expertise. If you do everything perfectly, it used to be, it ratcheted up to 18 months before Google would acknowledge you at all. Not before you're getting business, before you're being listed on page one. Now, Google has come out and said very clearly that they're indexing AI content. They're indexing machine generated content because their mission is to just make all the best information in the world accessible. And if a machine happened to generate an article that is fantastic, they're going to index that. The game's over. So don't even start. Now, you can, of course, I talked a lot about content. You've got to produce this content. Right? You've got to do that. And it's got to be published on your site. But this is why paid media is so critical. You basically need to buy your audience in order to make sure the right people are seeing this stuff. I would welcome any challenges to that incredibly controversial statement, by the way.
That is a very, maybe not comforting, but a little stance on SEO. I did get another one come in, kind of piggybacking off of that in a similar way. How does the GPT chat and open source AI affect marketing? So if you want to look in that way. Well,
I just mentioned one, right? Google is now indexing that content. That's a massive impact, right out of the gate. And I don't know. I don't know. We serve a lot of marketing firms. We serve a lot of developers. It's already having a massive impact on the medical field, on the legal field. It's everywhere. I think by the end of this year, we'll all have a much better sense of how this is going to impact all of us than we do right now. So it foundationally, at the very least right now, it has radically increased all of our ability to do research. The way I've encouraged my team to look at it, we just had a discussion about this yesterday, is basically behave as if you had a 20-person research team standing right next to you, waiting for you to tell them what to do. If you approach it that way, no matter what field you're in, you're going to be taking advantage of this technology pretty much right away. But yeah, Newfangled, our 30 employees have a mandate to be actively engaging with this stuff, to learn how to just expand our reach and our potential for each individual. It's gonna destroy a lot of jobs. It's gonna create a ton of jobs. It's here. We have to play to these rules. When I talked about the pace of change, right, and how referrals could kind of get you in trouble on that, this is a great example of it. The pace of change is about to get significantly ratcheted up.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
Still early days.
very early days. Yeah.
All right, another question that came in earlier was, how do I stay consistent with social media and content efforts when I have a small team? How do I prioritize which channels or mediums will get the most ROI?
Okay, so great question. Every single decision you make about your marketing has to start with, where's my prospect? What's my prospect doing? Where do they hang out? What do they care about? What matters to them? Always ask about that. The number one way marketing goes awry is people market to themselves and their peers inadvertently. Like, it kind of happens. There's something about human nature that just makes us want to do that. I don't quite know what it is, but it happens all the time. Just, it's always the prospect. That's the number one rule. So social media channels, it's where your prospect tends to hang out. If you're B2B, it's going to be LinkedIn and Google. If you're B2C, it could be all kinds of different places. But that's the way to prioritize that. And small team, yeah, that's the thing. It's hard to market. It's hard to put your own needs and objectives above a paying client's needs and objectives. And you've just got to be really disciplined about it, or hire someone to help you. It's one of those two things. And I'd recommend trying the discipline route first. But if that doesn't work, then there are people out there that can help with the stuff.
Great. Last question I have in here is, how do you turn down a potential client that's not culturally aligned without burning bridges, say for networking or future work's sake?
Yeah, there are all kinds of ways of saying no. And it's really nice. Once you do build up this line out the door, you have to start implementing these things. You say no through your schedule and availability. Well, we don't have any start dates for 3 months. You say no to your pricing by your pricing. Okay, this is the amount we need to charge in order to have the impact we need to have. There are lots of ways of saying no and letting them make the decision without insulting them. But if a given prospect isn't culturally aligned with you today, they're probably not going to be tomorrow either. And so, be polite, but telling the truth tends to work really well. Like, listen, you're a great person, and what you're doing is whatever, but where we're going and the work we're trying to do is in this other direction. And I don't think this is a good fit right now. But be prepared. Be prepared. When you say that, they are going to, if say it politely, and you craft it well, their interest in working with you is going to go through the roof. When you say no, no one likes hearing no. They are going to fight that no. So be ready for that. And also keep that in mind as a sales technique. It works very, very well. But pricing and timing are the two best ways to politely say no.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we're kind of wrapping up right on time. So thank you, Mark, so much for everything. You've given us a lot to think about and mull over. Just a couple announcements for everybody really quick. So the notes and the recording of this will be shared tomorrow, so you can rewatch it, share with any colleagues who may be missed out. And so you just keep an eye on your email for those notes and recording. Our summit is coming up May 2nd through 4th. So it's around the corner, and we just have a couple more weeks for people to register. So if you've been dragging your feet, there's still a couple more weeks left where you can buy your ticket. We have another virtual event happening May 9th. It is also a free one. It is all about cultivating compassion and care at work. And you can check out the link that Bridget just dropped in our comments if you'd like to register for that. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Mark, and have a good rest of your day.